Okay, so pretty excited about this session. Um, this is the 11th session, as some of you may have heard me asking Aaron, just confirming that. We're in the home stretch here. We've got this one today, and then two tomorrow. Very excited about the sessions. We got Clayton capping off the week with best practices, and prior to that, we have a panel discussion that's about resiliency. That's coming from the women in tech area. So pretty pumped about tomorrow. But today we got some pretty cool stuff. The format that we're going to go through for today is I'm gonna talk at you for about 15 minutes, but not much more than that. Maybe even a little bit less, but it's to give you kind of a foundation of what we're talking about with respect to collaboration. Then we're going to go into an exercise, and this exercise is really the meat of this session. It's really going to be able to give you a chance to work on some collaboration opportunities, a methodology to do it, and then actually be able to put you in a spot with some next actions. And then after we do that exercise, we're going to have a panel discussion, and we're going to have Stacy Hamer and Ken Conkle join us, and I'm going to be asking them some questions. And it's going to talk about kind of things that have gone well in the past and things that haven't gone so well in the past and what we can learn from it. So we're going to get a little bit of theory. We're going to get a little bit opportunity to workshop an application. And then we're going to hear from people who have the scars and the accolades of being able to do this really well. But before we do that, we're going to do the most complicated breakout thing ever. And Aaron has figured this out. I've put a disproportionate amount of stress on Aaron to pull this off. We're going to, now, if you get just one thing, when you hear the instructions and you already know this game, shut the frick up. Don't say anything. Don't wreck it. Just, but recuse yourself quietly. You observe, that sort of thing. The second thing is you're going to get broken up into two big groups, and there'll be Team Nevin and there'll be Team Scott. Go Scott, power of the people. And then what will happen is you're going to all come back into a room, and then you're going to break out again into groups of 4, and there'll be 2 from Team Nevin and then 2 from Team Scott, and you're going to collaborate-ish. Maybe, hopefully. Maybe not, we'll see. So Aaron, Team Nevin, Team Scott, let's see what happens. Okay, so we had you do that exercise because there was 1 orange, 2 purposes, and it was about asking the right questions to figure out that you could actually use the same orange to meet your needs. Often what we are faced with is scenarios where it's difficult to determine, and it's often not that neat and tidy that you can easily find a way to get 2 purposes out of one piece of fruit or whatever it might be. But so much of that exercise is reflecting kind of the path of how we got you to this spot on purpose. You've gone through the responsibilities of a team lead role. You've explored emotional intelligence. You've learned about some effective questioning and listening with Tracy's session. You learned about our OPSPs. You had the role of the coach for support purposes. We've got to this spot by design, because one of the big elephants in the room that we struggle with at iQmetrix is around collaborating against competing priorities. All too often, we score very highly on our surveys when collaboration within teams, but when we are seeking to collaborate and work between teams, we have a lot of a breakdown and we score poorly. And so we've got to this spot where what I really want to do with this session is to walk you through some methodology that you can utilize to deal with competing demands. So when I'm talking about collaboration today, what I'm getting at is, yes, there's collaboration where you brainstorm and come up with some new ideas, et cetera, but also it includes being able to work together in a team and the act of working with another person or group to create or produce something. And so I'm going to use collaboration in the broader sense in a way that it reflects the challenges that we face at iQmetrix, COVA, and Ready. And that has everything to do with that you have so many demands on your time and so many demands on things that are needed to be delivered, how do you properly prioritize? So sometimes it feels like collaboration is somebody's trying to stick a wrench into your ear, but we really, this is Everett. He's so cute. Everett is helping Brandon. Brandon's cleaning up a mess, and Everett wants to help, and so he's got his wrench, and he's ready to help out with that. We're going to really talk about collaboration in that broader sense. Why does it matter? Well, if you think about your environment as a team lead, and for those of you that are aspiring to be team leads, you experience this also in your job on a day-to-day basis, is that you are functioning within a very complex environment with a lot of uncertainty, not always having access to all the information that you need, but you do need to be able to access that information. You often have competing priorities where there is not a shortage of demands. You're faced with making complex decisions and problem solving. And what you often need is access to information and a perspective so that you're able to deliver on results. So collaboration is really a tool that's available, or is a tool that's available to us in order to reduce that uncertainty, to address the complexity, and to figure out how to deal with the competing priorities so you can make effective decisions and lead to the results that we're looking for. One of the pieces that really matters in all of this is that, and this goes right to a Tracy session, the emotional intelligence session, asking effective questions. Clayton talked about the role of a team lead, and then in the coaching is that there are pieces here around you need to be able to show empathy, and that's when we're in a dialogue, when we're engaging with someone or with other teams. You need to show you understand that what matters to others, that you understand what matters to them, and that you also care about that. The other element is that we have to establish trust. So we need to be open and transparent, and we need to be able to do what we said we would do. And the thing I love about iQmetrix, Cova and Ready, we have so many freaking nice people. It is a great environment. There are very few assholes. It is generally, when you're going throughout office to office, you're meeting people that you want to hang out with. And I'm not saying it's always it's a loving, but sometimes we are actually a little too nice, and we shy away from the conflict side because we think conflict is bad. We have methodologies to help us manage the process of dealing with conflict that I'm going to go to in a moment. But before I do that, I want you to really pay attention to the importance of empathy for others, focus on establishing trust. All too often, we get new ideas that come to us, or there's a change in direction or priorities, or there's differing opinions of the requests, and they often feel like they're your enemy. They're not your enemy. In fact, usually what it feels like is when your grandson is trying to hand you over the leftovers of his sushi to see if you want some. That's very kind, but I don't really want that sushi, thank you. And so when we look at new ideas coming, it's often, do I really need this on my plate? Or somebody saying, what do you mean we're changing direction again on something very important? These things often feel like our enemy, but they're not. They're the opportunities that we have for discussion and dialogue to be able to determine what is optimal decisions for each of our companies, whether it's Cova, Ready, or iQmetrix. And so what we've done is, within the company, and you had JV talk you through our OPSPs. And this is a tool that's available to you that helps you deal with all those requests, those ideas, the question about, do we need to change direction on something, that we have one-page strategic plans to help us prioritize where we're going to put our areas of focus. They become a tool that we can use. And if you're not, I know not all the groups are using OPSPs. My hope is that in near term, we will get to that spot. Some teams utilize product development methodologies, and these too you have tools available to you to deal with the requests that come in. You have the rhythms within your teams to manage those requests. So instead of feeling as a team lead, you have to carry the burden of the request yourself, bring these forward to your team and discuss it. And if you're finding that you're going to be faced with having to change some priorities, then you can escalate it to the team that you are working with, to the next team above you that you're drawing your ideas from for the OPSP. So there's a cascading effect throughout the company that ideally is going to create a linkage between each of the areas of the business so that you're able to determine what in fact should be the priorities. This often leads to a potential for conflict. And we have all sorts of tools and resources that are available to you. There's Crucial Conversations course in IQU, multi-level communication course. There's a book, Getting to Yes, about interest-based negotiations. And Nevin's got an exercise that we're going to touch on some of this, but it's a book I highly recommend reading. We had the session around asking effective questions. We've got processes in place around strategy and tactical meetings. We've got one-on-ones that are established. If you, as a team lead, are not getting a one-on-one from your team lead, schedule it. Insist on it. Push for it. It's your opportunity for dialogue in an informal setting to talk about priorities and talk about potential conflict to get some clarity on decision making. One-on-ones, and if you're not doing one-on-ones with your team members, I strongly encourage you to spend the time doing that. It's an element of the week for so many individuals within the company. And if you're not good at one-on-ones, or if you need to learn more about how to handle conflict, or if you need some support, we have coaches. And it's really great to see that we've had a number of coaching requests come in already. And so pretty excited about that. And then there's also a conflict resolution process that has been designed. And this sits in the IQS. And if you haven't had a chance to read the IQS, I strongly encourage you to do so. It's sitting on OneDrive, or is it SharePoint? What's it called? Is it OneDrive or SharePoint or both?
Both. Oh,
that makes it easy. It's in both those places, but I think it's just one place. So it's sitting, a copy of the document is in there, and we have a conflict resolution process and there's also a course on IQU about conflict resolution, and the coaches are well versed in how to help you through the conflict resolution process. And it's very straightforward 6 steps to this. It's like, prepare for a productive debate. What mindset are you going in with this? So if you're like me, where you can get triggered and you get all fired up, probably not the right time to discuss competing priorities. In fact, what you want to be doing is that you got the right mindset of seeking to understand, so that you can have a productive debate and discussion over whatever the conflict might be about. Find a way to ensure that you're protecting the teams, that you're ensuring that we have safety. And all too often, safety gets harmed when we're too willing to talk about the conflict in a broader group. Maintaining some confidentiality is often the best way to ensure that we're protecting teams through and keeping things safe. Engage in a mature conversation. I'm still working on this. I'm not sure what that looks like for me, but treat a focus on the idea at hand rather than trying to personalize it. And I know when the emotions start to bubble up and I can get fired up about stuff, and I gotta often find a way to check myself. So engage in the mature conversation. Let's say you're still at an impasse, you can bring in a mediator. And IQU can assist with the mediator side. This mediator is not there to solve or create the answer. This mediator is there to assist you in the dialogue. Still coming up with the answer is the responsibility of the team. Then if that doesn't work, we can pull a panel together, and that panel will be versed in the issues at hand and can provide advice to the teams. But it's not the panel that's going to make the decision, it's still the teams. And then finally, if none of those steps work, God help you, we're going to bring in an SRB member or someone from senior leadership group to assist with advising. And once again, that person is really there to help you guys reach a conclusion. Now, we can't stay at an impasse forever. If we get to a spot where push comes to shove and these things are immovable, and I can't imagine when we would get to a spot like that. We've had points in time in our history where I thought some things might just never get resolved, and we've been able to effectively resolve them. So there's a number of steps. There's more to learn on the conflict resolution process. And I think that I love the process that's been designed, because I really think it'll assist our teams in being able to have a more open dialogue. So that's kind of the theory pieces that I wanted to go through. It gives you a sense of what's already available to you. You've already gone through the training to prepare you for this exercise. And this exercise, I'm going to be turning it over to Nevin, and he's going to share his screen. And what Nevin's going to do is that it's going to be a guided exercise that will culminate with you guys. Look at that, Nevin got that right like the first try. It's so much better. He's gonna guide you through the exercise. Then we're gonna go into a breakout at the end of the exercise. So if you're going to run away, don't. The breakout will be super easy. Just stick around. Don't be afraid. It's not a hard breakout. So we're going to go through the guided exercise, then you're going to have an opportunity to share what you've developed through the guided exercise. The purpose of this exercise is to give you something for next actions, something that you can do coming right out of this session that hopefully you'll be able to tackle. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nevin, and he's going to guide us through the exercise.
Thanks, Scott. In the interest of being present, I mean, this week's been really good and really eye-opening for me. I want to tell you that I'm really nervous. The first reason, I mean, it's just so clear that I can't keep your attention with a grandson. So that's a problem. Secondly, I feel like I have been given this opportunity to do an exercise that converges so many of the brilliant things that have been talked about over the last few days. And I want to make sure I do a good job. And this is really trying to bring a practical perspective to a bunch of the things that we've been looking at. The process we're going to go through starts on page 25 in your workbook. I think it's going to take us about half an hour to go through it. And it's going to be just a series of prompts where I'm going to get you to fill out those steps in your workbook. And then we're going to have a brief peer conversation where you can sort of reality check it a little bit. The process we're using isn't some industry standard. It's actually just trying to really practically apply a lot of what we've talked about, but also it's just trying to really simplify and break down till we get to this final page that I'll spend a lot more time on. Just the mental model of how we can find beneficial third alternatives for a lot of this stuff. I'm gonna start just with all the things I've done well, except figure out how to move forward my slides. I'm gonna, oh, and that didn't move forward for you, did it? Are you able to see the next slide?
No, it just says exercise.
Oh, sorry. Okay, there we go. In step one, I'm not going to invite any conversation at this point. I just want you to take a minute and just identify a dependency within your work. So this might be something that's in your OPSP or just something that is a project that you're working on or whatever, but it's really just to identify something where you have a dependency on other people. They're going to be challenged with their own priorities, and you're going to need to get them to do some work for you to be successful. As we go through these steps, I'm going to just use an example myself just to hopefully help you or to stimulate your thinking. And the example I'm going to use is one that I think is relatively common. We need them to deliver a new feature. There's different interests and different needs of features and timing and all those sorts of things. The reason I'm spending a very small amount of time on this one is because in the next one, we really get into the details of breaking down in one dependency that you've chosen. So you might have a few on your mind right now, but this is about coming down to just one that you want to explore through the rest of the 25 minutes or so. So right now, please identify that one dependency that you'd like to explore. Okay, so next with step 2, we're gonna just do the exercise of, excuse me, everybody. We're gonna do the exercise of getting deeper into this headline that you have. So in my example, we need them to deliver a new feature. That might be my proposal. That's just the thing that would just make my life really simple, is they deliver a new feature. However, it's really healthy for you and for others, and as we go on and try and collaborate with others, is to try and think more deeply in terms of the tensions that you have, the interests that are bubbling up from your team, from your entire area, from the organization. And so I want to give you a few minutes. We'll actually go take up to 10 minutes here. And I want you to think about those questions that are on page 25 and try and answer what's deeper, what's a broader description you can use than simply I need that thing. And as you're doing this, you're welcome to ask questions if anything's not clear for you. You can see a lot of the tools that we've talked about throughout this week coming into play. This is another way that you could just simply do this, is to do a series of why questions. We need to deliver a new feature, but why do you need to deliver a new feature? Why is it important for our customers to be acknowledged and respected? It helps you broaden the perspective. In the Getting to Yes book, they actually talk about chunking. It's just this generic term I think they use to say chunk yourself up from the very specific need you have to a better description to help you get satisfaction, to get resolution. Arguably the hardest way to apply this kind of thing is when you're trying to negotiate for a vehicle. And in Getting to Yes, they actually use that example to figure out how to find shared interests, shared tensions between you and the salesperson, which is for you to, instead of you saying low price, them saying high price, you actually say, I need a trustworthy vehicle. I need something that's reliable and that I can count on. And it's kind of a really interesting exercise. And as we go through this, I think you're going to see that it just creates more opportunities for us to find answers that are beneficial for everybody. So then we're going to continue on, and these are just the pages that are, oops, wrong way. These are the pages that are still in the workbook. The next step is really critical, and we're just doing an approximation as an exercise right now. Very likely this step is the one that is the next action for you to go away and understand this a lot better, because it's, and there's maybe we're connecting a couple of things here. First of all, just do they know what you need? So make sure you just go and communicate with this individual what you need or what you expect. Can be very helpful to help them understand the implications of that as well. So those questions are in there to help you process and think through how you'd want to share that with the other party, the person that you're dependent upon. And then the real value here is the combination of open-ended questions, being empathetic, really understanding this person and what their needs are, what their proposal is, and what their tensions are. Me personally, when I think about having this kind of conversation, I say, like, there is no doubt in my mind that this person is very bright, making great judgment and making choices based on the context that they have that I would completely agree with. However, if we're at different positions, we're at different proposals, I really need to openly and earnestly understand that more. So this time that we're going to take, please put yourself in their shoes for the moment and think about what their challenges are, what their tensions are. And again, questions are welcome as you do this. I think everyone's too clever to get caught too far in that orange exercise. But if you don't take this step to really find out, and you're just really locked into, I need the orange, it can get really ugly, and it certainly doesn't have to. My expectation was that most people just would say, what do you need the orange for? And then you just figure out how you can work together. We need to perhaps ask what they need the orange for at work as well. That's what this step is about. I should point out, I speak to my example just for a moment too. So one group needs a new feature. They've got customers breathing down their neck for a new feature. And of course, there's a very clear need from the other group to focus on security and stability. Boy, is that ever a hard balance to find, how much we're supposed to do one or the other. And there's no magic bullet in this, but it's certainly, as we explore, it's to see how much can we have both? How much can we use the whole orange? And even more than we need to focus on security and stability. I certainly can't speak for a development team, but the words that I might try are that they're very concerned about the customer experience, and they actually are seeing a pattern that we are consistently less and less able to serve our customers, to be accountable, to be trustworthy for our customers, because they need to spend this time focusing on security and stability. I apologize to those that I'm rushing. I am going to move to the next one because this is a all the time practice, and I certainly am not giving you enough time here. It's hopefully something that you're able to see that you could incorporate to find solutions all the time. And especially on this next slide, and it's in your workbook as well. I'll just confirm the number that we're on. We're on page 27. We have something very similar, which is really a summary of the process that we've gone through so far. You take your proposal, and hopefully you've turned it into a more generous, flexible tension. While we've done it artificially without actually talking to the person, hopefully we've also considered what their proposal or their position is, and more broadly empathized and understood what their tension is. But then the next piece is see if you can find some words that help figure out how to solve both tensions. And I've got my own example on the next page, so it's still plenty of time for you to think about this. I think I'm just going to move to that next page here, which is you'll recognize hopefully what's in the first part. We need a new feature because we need to satisfy those customers. We need security and stability because we want to be trusted and responsive. And then there's some creativity required, and possibly some trial and error, possibly many, many different problem statements that you come up with too. But the magic of this is that there are lots of options for identifying what that problem statement is. Often, a problem statement is going to be one of those open-ended questions. It's not going to be, can group B deliver this on time? It's going to be an open-ended question that offers some freedom and flexibility to find many answers or a different answer. And so the one that I've got here, how to ensure customers know they are our top priority, this is intended to actually just open the doors in terms of possible things we could do. Maybe we have a huge number of other things that we have to prioritize, but it's to prioritize things that hopefully are based on both tensions being addressed and finding a more mutually beneficial path forward to this. Again, I'm pausing. I welcome conversation or questions here. We can, I mean, you can share some examples too if you're trying to figure out what would you say. It's a dare I say, a hobby of mine to figure out how to frame something in a way that addresses the needs of many.
Got a question.
Sure.
Do you have any advice for the scenario where you need to collaborate with a team that has internal confusion about their own goals and who struggle to articulate their context?
Yes. My immediate reaction is that some of that can't be your issue. This is actually about what you need as well. So it's too big of a bite to take to say, I must fix that team's confusion before I can get my thing. I do think that even just your clarity and your explicit expectations of what you need, and to help them understand what role they have in it and what the implications of that are, do help them be more organized and to be more thoughtful about their focus and priorities. Part of why they're having difficulty possibly prioritizing is because all of the stuff that is barraging them and that is possible isn't really clear and organized. And you can do a tremendous service for them by at least making sure that they understand and are clear about what you're wanting. Now, if they, as you're sharing that, if they're exposing and being open to you about other things, I think it's great to be supportive and collaborative of them. I think I would coach anyone to make sure that they know what their boundaries are, so that they're not so distracted by that they're not able to be effective by themselves.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. There can be so many reasons why a team is in that spot. And I would suggest that most teams would recognize they're in that spot and are trying to deal with it. And just to put emphasis on Nevin's point about, it's a great opportunity to be supportive to that team. And so I think it's actually a great opportunity for a team to be able to start to look at, okay, what are in fact the areas of focus that we should have, and what initiatives should we be putting priority on? So hopefully it doesn't happen too often, but I know that there are teams right now that are struggling with that, and it's due to the complexity and uncertainty that they're facing.
I'm going to jump us forward. I really hope I'm not rushing anybody too much, but I'm going to jump us forward so that we can spend our time with the breakout. Maybe I'll just check with Scott if we do 10 minutes from now. Have I screwed stuff up?
Yeah, I think this portion is really important for people to talk it through, and so as quickly as in this, take 3 minutes each. Talk through what the dependency is, and then specify what your next action that you're committing to taking. And we'll do that for 10 minutes, and then we'll reconvene, and then we'll bring Ken and Stacy on as the panel guests. We are going to segue into the panel now. We have Ken Conkle, who heads up the product and tech area. And we have Stacy Hamer, who is customer engagement. And the two of them are also members of the senior leadership group. Both have been with iQmetrix for a very long time and have been around long enough to know our major wins and then our major challenges. And so I'm going to be asking Ken and Stacy a series of questions, but if you want to put something into the chat, please do so. If I miss it, Aaron will definitely draw my attention to it. And so I'm going to start. I'm going to start with Stacy. I'm going to put you on the hot seat first. Why do you think we have struggled so much in dealing with conflicting priorities? Why has it been such a challenge for us at iQmetrix over the years?
I think it's been a challenge because of, I think the priorities often don't have clarity on what's expected out of the priority. So I find historically we maybe haven't broken things down into milestones against a big priority. It's just if you don't get to X, then, we haven't, achieved that correctly. So I think we haven't done a great job of setting meaningful milestones along the way to achieve a certain priority to show progress. I also think we tend to be so hardcore about what the end result is, it makes it impossible to pivot even slightly. And, we have to, I think we should have embraced a little bit more in the past that, depending on what happens in the market with our customers, that we can edit what that looks like and how to get there. And that doesn't mean we're not working towards the same thing, but it can be perceived as, competing priorities or change in priorities too often.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's, I think, been a big theme for us.
Thanks. Ken, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would also say that, without getting into too much of a rabbit hole, when you think about the kind of company where you want to respect other people's autonomy, you can often have multiple people telling you what their number one priority is. And so I find that we often get ourselves into situations where a team, and I think somebody said this before we headed into the last breakout, where you've got like multiple number one priorities competing. And so sometimes we don't do a good job of equipping teams with the context that they need to sort of prioritize against one another, especially when things are so separate. I think Nevin used an example of like feature work and security work. How do you prioritize those against each other when both are vital to our success as a company? Totally understand that it can be very difficult, and sometimes teams aren't sure where to go. I think we're getting better, but where to go for that context when they're making that decision, and then how they communicate their decision, what went into making that decision back out to the relevant stakeholders.
Awesome. What from the senior leadership group, what steps are you guys taking in order to help with the ability to deal with competing priorities, but also nurture collaboration? And as Chris would say, popcorn style. Which one of you want to go first on that?
Me.
Stacy, awesome.
I think we've done we've acknowledged it completely when we talk a lot, is we don't involve the right people at the right times in conversations. Historically, we've been very reactive. So I think about, any sales demo or really large opportunity, we bring people in at the last second. So a good example of this recently is us trying so hard. We're probably over inviting right now, trying to bring all the groups in, is with the charter RFP. Was one of the first times we had all the right stakeholders, I feel like, trying to collaborate on what the right solution is. So we had product there, ES, customer, sales, everyone was there. And I actually can't think of another example where we've done that early. So I think, we have not done a great job in the past at involving the right people at the right times. And that is just, causes so much reactiveness. Like, think about SLGA and how reactive it felt like that went. Well, what if we would have brought all these people at the very beginning? I think we would have had a different end result a lot quicker.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacy. Ken.
Yeah, I'd maybe just say a couple of things. One is working around transparency. And so trying to be transparent as possible about work, priorities, velocity, capacity, conflicts, lots of almost hidden work, I'll call it, that we have at iQmetrix sometimes, where we don't acknowledge this large sort of groundswell of work that we have on top of what's being asked for. So I think this transparency also around priorities and as they're shifting. And, you know, what's interesting, it can be a double-edged sword, because some people, it can feel like we're shifting a lot. And so you don't want to hold information from people. At the same time, you don't want to overshare something when it's very likely it could change. I mean, iQmetrix, there's one thing, I think I say this every year, there's one thing about iQmetrix is I know it is always interesting. Things are always changing. And so it's almost just the nature of the industry, the nature of the work, that those priorities will naturally shift. You know, it's sticking to a priority that you set a while ago as things around you change isn't necessarily going to be a good thing. But I get that transparency can sort of scare people sometimes. But, you know, I think that the information that we have should obviously, the priorities that we're setting from SLG should flow down through the various groups and the priorities that they have. So from, say, product and tech and the SRE group or the security group or the development teams and the tech debt that they want to have addressed, those priorities should also flow upwards. And so there's almost this meeting in the middle where you're working out some of these different priorities and how they work together. And I mean, context is so important. And I feel sometimes without proper context or that transparency, people sometimes feel there's this like underbelly of hidden knowledge that's contributing to decisions, or there's this like secret vein of knowledge, which you don't want to be the case. You want people to feel like they have the context and that leadership or, you know, their team leads or people have the information that they need to make decisions about their work.
Well, the balancing of transparency, because I know the default of the senior leadership group from day one, which is a year and a half ago now, was an emphasis on transparency. Maybe how about expanding on the challenges that you face with transparency? Can you mention the right balance? How do you figure out the right balance? What does that actually look like?
You know, that's it is interesting. I mean, my preference is to like almost overshare, share what you know with context, with the understanding that, hey, things might change. This isn't set in stone yet. You know, I think about even sharing the product and tech OPSP, which we're going to do from June, with the knowledge that like, hey, this is still kind of in flux, and by its very nature, by the industry, it's always going to be in flux. We're not going to have, say, a strategy set today that we know can say confidently is not going to change for the next 12 months. I don't even know how many years I've been at iQmetrix, like a million, but no year has that ever been the case where the priorities we set out at the start of the year are the same priorities we have at the end of the year. And so I just think context is so important. And that you have shared buy-in sort of to that collective vision. So people have the context, not a command, but the context around, and here's the initiatives, here's the priorities, here's what we need to do, and here is why, as much as possible that we can share. I think that context. So I tend to lean on oversharing and recognizing that sometimes that comes back to bite you, and you've got to sort of eat it as a leader and say, hey, I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I agree. I'm always a fan of oversharing as well. The one thing, you know, I feel like I'm trying to do more lately is give heads ups on things that could come, which I historically never did. And I don't think the company's been great at. So, you know, I found myself in a discussion with Craddock and Meredith last week, just saying, you know, this is something just to think about. We don't know. I'll keep you in the loop, but just start thinking about this. And that's a new thing, you know, for me as a lead to try to help out my leads with, is just giving them heads up on how to think about different things. And I think from SLG's perspective, one thing I hope we can start doing more of that we're trying really hard on is being transparent with how we're going to make decisions. So, you know, if we think back to that email that we sent out around COVID and how it might potentially impact us, and we're not sure, and we don't want to paint this picture perfect, you know, everything's great when we don't know how it's going to play out. We sent an email saying, you know, here's what we're going to do first if we have to. And then if we have to do more things, here's what we're going to do. And then if we have to, we're going to do even more. And everything we're talking about right now has triggers and plans depending on outcomes. I feel like we're trying to be really prepared with context so that we can share, like, this is what we're going to do and when and why. And that's been really new to us only in the last several months, I'd say.
Yeah, if I could just say one thing on this balance, because this is something that comes back to, I guess, bite me, I'll say, or I know some of the angst that it can cause people, because when I have shared something where I don't have all the answers, but people are able to connect the dots, like, oh, hey, what you're saying is really going to impact me. I have X, Y, Z in front of me, and what you're saying, I feel like should change those things. And what should I do? And I don't have those answers necessarily yet, or I haven't fully thought about it, or I've shared something before I've thought through all the ramifications. So sometimes that oversharing can create some of that chaos. And so I do recognize that that's that double-edged sort of nature of that sword, where it introduces maybe some context or heads up that might be coming, but it's going to cause some things where we just don't have the answers, but we know it's probably going to impact you in some way. And so recognizing, I guess, as a leader, when you're sharing information, it's going to have an impact on people. They're probably going to have questions that you might not be able to have answers for.
Yeah, and it's okay you don't have answers.
And definitely, and you know there'll be a ripple effect where information then cascades throughout the organization at the same time. So it does add to a complexity to it. I'm going to shift gears a little bit on you because I've got a question from Dean L. Thoughts on how much that's not my role was tossed around under holacracy and how that impacted on collaboration. What are your thoughts on that? Oh
man, I could go on just a wicked rant right now about that's not my role. But I won't. We only have like 9 minutes left or however long we get left. So I won't. But I will say I think this was a terrible side effect. And I know it wasn't people's intention to cause the holacracy runaround. But a lot of people did get caught up in that. And I would feel that largely that has been eliminated from our lexicon. I don't know when the last time was I heard that from somebody. And if I did, it would probably cause some PTSD. But I do think that really hampered people's feeling like we were collaboratively working as one whole team. It felt like a whole bunch of kind of isolated teams where you really had to sort of try and break down the barriers to get any sort of work back. I'm not saying all teams were like that, but I think it was a really unfortunate, unintended consequence of some of the structures that we set up.
Yeah, it made us, I felt like it was a very robotic way to approach work. And what I feel like we lost on the collaboration side is any of the empathy that I think we really need to be successful, either for our clients and making sure that things are working well for them, or as fellow colleagues. There was, all this empathy for people and their roles or what they're being faced with was really lost with that. And there was no room for, any of that, which I think is so important in our world. It was just completely gone. So I think it had a pretty big negative impact on collaboration, no question.
Margot has a question here. What do you guys do? What about when the work takes much longer than the strategy allows? So for example, you're just breaking through on progress and the strategy changes. So you've been working on something. I think where Margot's going with this is, you've been working on something, the strategy changes on you, you've done all that work. And Margot, correct me if I'm not capturing this correctly. I don't hear from Margot, so I think
no, that's right. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Thumbs up.
Okay, let's start with Stacy on this one.
Ooh, that's such a hard one. I mean, that one's really tough because that happens a lot. And I've been in that boat a million times where, we've made commitments, externally or to clients, and, we get so far down the path and then we pivot. So, what I found works really good is, as much as it's hard to deal with. I think on the partner space and on the client face, when there's people that aren't iQmetrix, I find transparency is so important externally as well. So, we just have been owning stuff left and right with clients. When, we change gears or we start something and stop something, we're just giving them the context why. So as much as we're saying, hey, it's really important to be transparent with context internally on why we're doing that, it's finding the right balance of, doing that externally as well. And that's actually worked out super good for us. I was really, really nervous the first few times we gave clients context as to why something changed, or we weren't going to make a deadline, or we weren't going to do anything at all. And it has gone over very, very well almost every single time. So I don't think we should try to paint too perfect of a picture when our strategies change and the work that we did has to go away. And then I think personally it's really tough, and it's getting excited about what's next, because I've been there too, Margot. I know that that feeling well.
Anything you want to add to that, Ken? Such a good question.
What's that?
I said it's such a good question.
Is this about, so this was Margot's question from the chat?
Yes.
This is a really good question, and I think you'd have to ask, like, was your original strategy wrong? Was it right, but you didn't execute fast enough? Are you required to still finish that work, or is your strategy changing because that has shifted? Maybe it was right at the time, but now it's no longer the right thing to pursue. And there's a bunch of things that we could throw out from our past of things that we shifted away from. It seemed like a good idea at the time and we did it, and it was like, nope, actually client uptake isn't there, or they're not willing to pay for it, or the experience isn't right. And now we've got all these other priorities, and we're going to not invest in that area because we don't think that's where the effort should be anymore. Because the flip side of that is that oh man, I'm going to say something that I'm not supposed to say, because you end up not killing your babies because you're so attached to them and you want to see, oh, I knew it. You want to see them succeed, but the reality is, like, nope, you got to put it on the shelf. Oh, that's a better term. You got to put it on the shelf. And because you have to shift, and it shouldn't be because it's your hobby horse that we're pursuing something. And that is such a deep question that's really hard to answer in this, like, a short amount of time. And it would probably be really situation specific.
No, I appreciate both responses. I think that's covers it for sure. Thank you, guys.
I'm going to swing back to Vic's question. Great question, Margot. I'm going to swing back to Vic's question, since it's tying in the theme. How do you establish transparency with people you don't necessarily spend time together with? And for the two of you, where you have a responsibility across the whole company, how do you establish that transparency in light of the fact that you do have a living, breathing strategy that does lead to regular changes?
Ken go.
Ken go first, then you, Stacy.
Sure. And so it is difficult. I mean, trust is crucial to willingness. And so establishing trust between people, coworkers, your cohorts is so vital. Is it Al Pacino? Al Pacino once famously said, you either heal as a team or you crumble. And you go forward inch by inch, fighting for every inch with all you've got, because the person next to you is doing the same for you. And so there has to be that sort of reciprocal trust, and you have to work at building that up. And so I think you almost have to allow yourself to be a little bit vulnerable and transparent, especially even now when you think about how workplace is probably changing, a lot more remote work, a little less in-person probably interaction. And so, we're going to have to develop this sort of skill and competency of building those relationships, even if they're purely virtual or Zoom-based. Or I think of some people like Paul, who started during this lockdown, and he's had to try and build that relationship and collaborate with others and build up trust when he hasn't actually met anybody in person. and so I acknowledge that it's probably a lot more difficult because it's harder to have those sort of random encounters where you just shoot the breeze and you start to build a rapport with somebody. But I think it can be done.
Well, Stacy, I'd love you to answer the question, but also any closing remarks that you want to make to the team leads that are on the call right now, and I'll give Ken a chance after you. So take a run at her.
Okay, what I guess I would say is, what I've learned, especially during the pandemic, that I think is so important for cross-team collaboration is actually truly trusting your team and trusting them more than you did previously, and totally being accepting if we fail, whether that's a decision you make or a decision they make, that it's completely okay and we're only going to be better for it because we're going to learn something from it. So I think when we put more trust in others and give them the opportunity to do stuff, we really start seeing more passion and collaboration with other teams, collaboration within our own teams. So that's the thing, honestly, I've learned really recently is trust your teams more than you did before and challenge yourself to trust them going forward and give them a chance to just do what they think is right, because what I find is they're actually going to be right and have better ideas than you have. And I think, I want to do more of that going forward, and I think it's the best thing I've learned recently.
Awesome. A great message, Stacy. Ken, closing comments.
I think we covered a lot of it. I think between the transparency, context, empathy, so empathizing with another person or another team's predicament and the pressures they're under. I think everybody feels bombarded from all sides. And so just recognizing that when you're coming to somebody, you're just one vector of many that person is dealing with. And so I often think about that, and I know I can be a disruptor when I'm coming to somebody. And so you think about the disruption potentially that you're causing them, and then think about sort of how would you empathize with that situation? What's the context that they need? What's the context that you need from their situation to help you understand, the decision making that they're trying to go through, and then just recognizing when we all have our own egos and personalities and ways of working and how we approach work and how we approach one another. And I think it's almost, you have to be extra mindful of that over Zoom and video conference. You almost have to be extra attentive to some of those details and those personal interactions that you have with people. And then just work to build up trust, not just other people's trust in you, but to Stacy's point, trusting others when given context and then their own decision-making within their team and sphere of influence, and they've got their own strategies that they're trying to achieve. But then just push for context about why something is the way that it is. Like, that's an okay thing to ask for, even when you don't get the result that you want.
Okay, that's awesome answers, guys. I really appreciate you being on the panel. Thank you for participants being engaged. Just as a reminder, you have multiple resources available to you on communication and processes and support from coaching. What I heard Ken and Stacy say is call them anytime when you want transparency, and they will be able to fill in the gaps for you. I really appreciate the level of engagement. The big thing, the exercise we went through, I encourage you to take those next actions today, and if not today, tomorrow before the week is out. Take those steps, get going on the collaboration with other teams. This will help break the roadblocks that so many of us are facing. And then when you do that, you'll sleep just like Everett does, and you'll just be so rested. I just had to put one more baby picture in. He's so cute.
Not to one up you, Scott. I have a live baby.
Hey, Scotty. Hey, right on. Sean wins. You guys have a great afternoon, rest of the day. Take care. Bye now.
Everybody.